Episode 7 debuted at 12:01 a.m. of this very day. Episode 7 of PICARD, Season 3, which of course we call PICARDist. And ladies and gentlemen, the show begins. I kind of love this music. Won't lie to you. I didn't write it. I paid for it. But I love it. So, all the things that happen on Picard are exciting and fun. Hang on. Lots of great characters introduced. I don't know why I think I'm like catching you up. If you're in, you're in. If you haven't watched it yet, you haven't watched it yet. But we're so pleased to have you here on this particular Weber internet thingy. And by we, I mean myself and my co-host, novelist, horror writer, man about town, genteel gentleman. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Joe Townsell. Hello, Joe. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Captain. I'm pleasure to be here as always.
Joe, of course, our chief science fiction officer. And he and I spend a lot of time in the ready room arguing about whether Amanda Plummer or Christopher Plummer is the superior Star Trek Plummer. We don't know.
You know, there's pros and cons to each, and I just refuse to make that distinction until we're done with the Vadic.
Yes, because a lot happened in this episode concerning Vadic. Am I wrong?
Yes, indeed. You are not wrong, sir. Now, I want to thank you, by the way, on designating me as a man about town. Although in Kingman, Arizona, that's not much of an accomplishment, but I'll take it.
Now, part of me goes like, Joe, don't tell people where you are. They'll come to town and they'll expect you to take them around and wine and dine them. Ain't nobody going to Kingman.
No, afraid not. People pass through quite a bit. If someone wants to take the time to stop and meet me and have me take them around town, wining and dining, well, there's limited options there, so they're more than welcome.
I hope you like Taco Bell. And for me, it would be, I hope you like Taco Bell because it's in the next town.
Yes.
Because I live in a tiny town myself. What a world we live in, that two men from small towns can meet on the internet, because that is, we have yet to meet live. Which,
that's true.
Now, folks, that's something we call the pandemic. But here we are able to enjoy this show together. This is I say this, and it comes from a cranky yet loving, happy place, which is I never would have done this show had it not been for Joe.
Well, I appreciate you saying so.
Joe suggested it. Joe said he wanted to do it. And because Joe wanted to do it, I was like, oh, well, I want to do it now. And I'm glad. I'm really glad I did, because I'm very much enjoying this season. This episode, however, we got to kind of get into this episode, Joe.
Well, I'll say this at the top before we get to the beats, but I'll put it this way. I hope this is the weakest episode of the season.
Because for you,
I want the others to be better. They remain.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of reasons to believe it is. And it was, to me, it was a really good 20 minutes stretched out to about 45.
Yes.
This is also a very slow going season, as we've mentioned in previous episodes. Season 2, so much was happening. They went so many places. Season 1, we had a Borg cube and the fate of Romulus and an AI planet, and we had all these. And this season so far has been, things are really tense on this ship. Yes. Meanwhile, things are really tense in this one room. Like, it's very small. It's very claustrophobic would be a good way of putting it. And the good part is it's all about tension. This season is the most tense.
Mm.
And it's hard. It's hard to find tension as your great entertainment, but I think it'll pay off. I really do.
Well, so do I, and let's not mislead our viewers in that this is a total write-off, and that's far from it.
Yeah.
It just is
Yeah.
the closest I've experienced so far to a season 2 episode where it really started to bog down.
Yeah.
And this, I would have almost welcomed rather than what seems to be more of a filler episode, maybe just a standalone, because
Yeah.
I don't know how they would put in the middle of a serialized arc,
Yeah.
but it just basically they for budgetary reasons they would sometimes have what they called bottle shows, and this is kind of like the bottle season, as you suggest, John.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff happening in one spot, but that's okay. It's just, I think for the first time we've kind of experienced this as being just a little bit dragging out. And I have heard more than once elsewhere that episodes 7 and 8 are best viewed together.
Oh,
Which, of course,
yeah.
we don't have that option. Well, so who knows? Maybe a lot of this that we're experiencing with episode 7 will be negated when we see what comes next.
Excellent point. You brought up that same exact point that people had mentioned to you last week. So we did go into, it's so funny. I don't even think I necessarily remembered it, but I did go into this episode going, they're laying down bricks.
Yeah.
This is a foundation. Frontier Day is coming. I can't believe. I mean, okay, let's talk about that part of storytelling. I don't know how into Hitchcock movies you are. I would think.
Oh, yep, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I would think you were a big aficionado, being a storyteller yourself, and a great appreciator of storytelling that brings out emotions in the person reading or watching, and that's a lot of what I'm getting here, especially because Hitchcock always builds up to some sort of big set piece at the end.
Right.
Like, they're having a fist fight on the Mount Rushmore, or, they're having a fist fight on the Statue of Liberty. Like, he would somehow figure out some, sort of big event where all this pressure would come to bear. So I do appreciate that it's like they're building up to that here. It's just so funny to me that it's Frontier Day. Which is, the establishment. Is it the birthday of the Federation? Is that how
I'm going to have to assume that Frontier Day is, yeah, well, no, that would be something different. First Contact Day is Zephyr and Cochrane, obviously, so that's different. I don't know. We should look that up on Memory Alpha. My assumption is that Frontier Day is roughly when we were capable and had a federation to back it up.
Right. I mean, that works too. Okay, well, we'll have that information for you.
Or if someone's with us, please let us know.
Yeah, if you're watching right now, and I'm looking at our number of viewers, and no one is. Hey, we do this show because it's a good show and we like each other. That's why we do this.
And people will check us out later.
And hopefully you're checking it out later. And if you're watching this, God bless you. We love you. We appreciate it. We really do. Let's talk about.
I do have to agree with you that just maybe it's just the name of it, but every time there seems to be a little bit of tension and foreboding, the term Frontier Day gets thrown out there, and it's like it kind of brings me out of it. It's like it almost seems comical in that context.
I mean, it really does. It's like I don't know. I mean, I guess we all grew up in parts of the country. It happens to a lot of us where there was something historical nearby. And so the school would get dragged there. Like all the field trips are about going there. For us, we were always going to like Sturbridge Village and Strawberry Bank and like these very colonial places, because I grew up in New England and the colonies. So, we're always going to like watching some lady making butter. She's wearing like glasses from the Pearl Vision Center. She's got like a digital watch on. She's like, oh, I hope my husband comes home, and that's me, Goody Smith. This fudge will be on sale in the gift shop. Okay, here we are. I found I found Memory Alpha here on my handy tablet, kids. So as I told Joe, I didn't really take notes, but my sleep medicine was just too powerful.
Oh my goodness.
I did make it all the way through though. I found this really interesting. I do not know Deborah Kampmeyer, but she was our director on this episode. I'm sorry, part 7. I
Yes,
do
let's get it
love
right.
that they do that.
Part
Part
7.
1, part 2. So we're at part 7 of Picard, season 3. This one was written by Jane Maggs, and she seems to be new to the franchise, which is very impressive. Good for her.
And I believe in this episode we also have some additional new music scoring.
Yes, I noticed. Really great music in this one.
Yeah.
And what is his name? I'll find him in the way down here in the credits. And I will say too that we had a very special appearance of a past Star Trek character right away in the teaser. You know, if we're gonna do this, we gotta do this for real. Let's break it all down. All right, Joe, my heavy metal is too loud. All right, we got the beats here. They are Mr. Townsend. Would you please pick up where I left off?
Absolutely, John. Well, let's start by saying that in what is arguably the not just the first 5, but the best 5 minutes of the episode, we're having a little bit of a powwow over subspace with somebody none other than Tuvok.
Yes.
One of Seven's friends and colleagues, of course, from Voyager from years past.
Played by the inimitable Tim Russ.
Yes. And you know what? Before you even see his face, you know it's him.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting Tuvok, but I said, oh, there's Tuvok. And then they show him on the blue screen.
Just a great voice. You know, he's quite the musician, Tim Russ.
I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah, quite a player and a singer. And it is, this scene is so great on so many levels. It is driven by the big, desire that we left off with the last show, which is what happened to Will Riker. They don't know. We know, but they don't know. And it was a great reminder to me that they're in a panic. They need to find Riker.
Well, not just Riker, but they need to find allies. They've been trying desperately, apparently, to reach out to those people they can trust under normal circumstances. But it takes extensive voice analyses and other questions trying to figure out, is this somebody we can trust, or is it a changeling in disguise? And for a while there, to the point of even playing the Voyager theme for a moment, said, this is Tuvok. This is our guy.
Yeah.
But there's one more thing up Seven's sleeve, and she finds the one thing to trip him up. And once again, the changeling has a hard time, bluffing through talk of old times, and pseudo Tuvok blew it. But boy, I tell you, when he turned that little evil sneer on, I said, oh my goodness, this is pretty bad. It's scary.
Same here. And honestly, I started going, like, I remember there were a couple of times in Tim Russ's career, because he was on everything. He did all kinds of guest stars and co-star appearances on so many different shows. And of course, he's famous for Spaceballs, where they're combing the desert, and he's got a giant comb. And I believe he's the one. Do you remember the quote? Maybe better than I do.
I don't remember the quote. I just remember the type of comb he had.
Yeah. Was he using the pick?
He was using the pick.
He was using an Afro pick, combing the desert. And it's like, have you found anything? And he goes, we ain't found shit. Tim Russ. Oh, but I haven't seen him play a lot of villains, is my point. Mm-hmm. And when he gets revealed as the changeling, that everything changes just in his face, because they're just doing a head and shoulder shot, and that's good acting, my friends. That is oh, watch it again and just see how he does the turn from, I am your friend, and he's playing an emotionless guy when he's being, a good guy, but suddenly he's a changeling again, or he's a changeling.
Right.
And you see he's holding nothing back. I loved that. I loved that for Tim Russ. I loved that he could put a pin in that and go, hey, everybody. They only gave me like 3-4 minutes, but nailed it.
And I tell you, when Picard confronts fake Tuvok and says, "Where's Riker?" Well, then he of course morphs into Riker, and I think I finally have my answer to why the show is so dimly lit. Because in that scene where he morphs into Riker, he is fully lit, and boy, Riker looks kind of bad.
Well, I took that as the changeling wanted to really upset them, so he made himself look like near-death Riker.
I agree. I think that was intentionally altered to make him just look.
Yeah, to give you an idea of like what they were threatening, because I believe the threat is, once we are done with you, death will be a comfort. Was that the line?
Close enough. I mean, or you'll welcome death with, something along those lines.
Oh, I have it. All I can tell you is, when we are done with him, when we are done with all of you, death will come as a relief. That's some good villaining right there, man.
Well, especially within the context of someone pretending to be the emotionless Tuvok, who, of course, like all majorly fleshed out Vulcans in Trek, have some elements there here and there, especially as they evolve, which give them a little bit of nuance and depth.
Yeah.
But largely emotionless, and trying to strike that balance that Seven would recognize. And he almost had her until she thought of one incident that tripped him up.
I loved that scene. I loved that scene. It's just such a perfect button to their relationship too, where she says, the lie you told, or the lie that you believed about where I got, I'm trying to remember exactly what she said she'd gotten done, but basically something had been, repaired on her. And she said, no, it was repaired on the ship through a Vulcan mind meld from my friend Tuvok.
That's right. And I'll have a point on that when we get to our tidbits later.
Oh, cool. Oh, very cool.
Flesh that point out a little bit.
Yeah. So, I love where we are. We get a lot accomplished in that first few minutes. And we see how incredibly desperate everything is right now. That's a great time to take that temperature and to go, oh man, we are so screwed.
And I'll have another point regarding Tuvok in our prediction section as well. So please, Captain, don't let me forget. Although that won't be much of a prediction, but I'll take it as such.
Yeah.
Well, we have met our budget for this episode because Worf and Raffi are on their way. They will not appear, nor after this one scene will Riker. And of course, poor Troy, she's really sidelined. I think we've had 3 lines of dialogue from her in the whole series so far.
There's gonna be okay, that's a prediction. I'm gonna save that for predictions.
Okay.
But yeah, I do believe Marina Sirtis will be earning her paycheck. I'm just gonna say that.
Oh no, there's definitely big stuff coming, but it's being held back to the right time. I agree with that prediction. Well, once we got past that little incident and on the bridge with fake Tuvok, we got Beverly and Picard and Geordi. They're trying to figure out what to do about these changelings, and how are we going to, we can't keep hiding from them. There's only so many junkyards and in the Alpha Quadrant, and Beverly might have some ideas about how to deal with these new changelings, but of course, being true Beverly, she has a little bit of a moral dilemma to deal with here. And I said,
that's Trek, man. That's Star Trek. I did react badly to it at first, which was like, wait, they're trying to kill your kid. But it is very Star Trek to go, well, there is one thing we could do, but that would probably be genocide. So,
yeah, but do 8 changelings make a genocide?
Well, I don't know if they know that yet. No, but she
No, they
does
don't.
know, right?
Not quite. That'll be revealed later.
I mean, and that's another thing that's great about this episode is that we learned so much about the changelings that are really threatening everything. So there's a lot of information there, which is great.
Yeah, probably the strongest part is as we'll get to later.
Yeah.
But there is one guy on board, they just took on that might have some answers to what's going on. So let's fire up the data lore hybrid, shall we, and see what's going on within his head. So I think we got a little bit of a modification from the initial analysis. Is that I thought Law was part of that mix, although I guess just being part of data she is.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much specified that the active personality-driven aspects of the new being are data and lore, whereas B4 and Soon are just basically there for memory retention.
Yeah, and it's funny because I did see a very lively conversation about this online on one of the Facebook pages for Star Trek, and people had isolated that moment. Somebody said, "Oh, nobody mentioned Lol. Why is everyone talking about Lol?" And somebody had isolated the part where Soong in his journal, which is acted out because it's a hologram, does mention Lol. And does mention B4, and I imagine they're not important enough to be sort of formed. And as Joe points out, Lol was already integrated into Data's memories because when Lol died, Data specifically took that information and copied it into his hard drive. It's very sweet. Makes me want to cry just a little bit just remembering it.
Well, it makes sense only because remember, Data carries the memories of all the colonists of where he was discovered.
Right. That's
but
right.
only as memory engrams. Though there's no distinct person there anymore.
Right. Yeah. Right. I'm always hopeful. Again, this is more a prediction than anything else, but I'm always hopeful that somehow that memory of being a parent, having a child, will do something good for Data. Help him fight back, maybe distract Lore, maybe touch Lore's heart. But this is a prediction, and I'm skipping ahead, so pay no attention.
That's quite all right. It all comes up when it comes up, and I think you're onto something there, John. To be honest, there's going to be one or more major epiphanies yet for Data to ultimately emerge triumphant in terms of dominating this particular vessel.
We do see them talk about it quite a bit. Can they erase Lore? Probably not. Can they integrate them so that Lore doesn't completely take over the space that's taken up by Data and they can coexist? Probably not. There's no good news here from what I remember.
Not yet. And again, let's save some of that for Down and Dirty because it does harken back to an early TOS episode for me, which I think is relevant. So stay tuned, sir.
Nice. I like this format, Joe, because it teases what's coming later in our show. And I'm like, well, I'm going to stick around for that. Well, of course you are, John. You're hosting the show.
But that's okay.
Hopefully the person watching.
If we can't keep you on board, John, then we're kind of doomed.
Hopefully the person watching is feeling the same way. Okay, so after the conversation where we just realized we ain't getting rid of Lore, that's not going to happen easily.
No, we can't. We can't remove that partition because it's just too risky that he would come to dominate.
Yeah.
Hence the double meaning of our episode title, I think.
Well, I hadn't thought about that at all. Oh, that's something.
There's a fight for dominion within the new Data vessel, whatever, for lack of a better term.
Yes. So. Yes, dominion. Wow. I love this damn show. I really do. I love the depths. Can we talk about the beat where there's something within the Picard corpse that's not 100% Picard?
Sure.
I'm still wrestling with that. I'm still trying to figure out what they were saying there.
Well, I know what for me. On the surface, it's obvious, but it's almost too obvious for me for it to be a plot point.
Yeah.
And the obvious answer is that Picard's organic corpse was still riddled with Borg nanoprobes his whole life after becoming Locutus.
That would make a ton of sense. Because
So a
I
lot
was
of people are
going the other way.
speculating that Locutus will return, but again, is it going to be in a way, if that's true, will that make sense within this storyline? I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I was going in the opposite direction, which was, is this like making reference to the episode Conspiracy again? Because, I mean, okay. Something you should probably know about me and Joe. We've never quite let go of the throwaway episode of Next Generation called Conspiracy, where there's like parasites or something
They're little
inside.
bugs.
Little bugs. and they were, these basically, take over the host kind of parasites, and they got rid of them in like one episode.
Yeah.
of Next Generation. And that's one of the things that Picard has been great about the entire series, is tying up loose ends of things from previous Star Treks.
Sure.
And so we're always looking for that magic moment where maybe that gets settled. I wondered if they were mentioning that, although the nanites makes a lot of sense, because the Borg still recognize Jean-Luc Picard. When they see him, they always go, "That's Locutus."
Well, I mean, like the Borg Queen, who has been resurrected multiple times, and sometimes a little bit slightly different appearance, whatever.
Yeah.
Who's to say that? I mean, I don't know that Locutus originated with Picard.
I always wondered about that.
Yeah.
I always wondered about that. And earlier in Picard season 3, Picardist, Captain Shaw just gives his opinion. It's not definitive what he says, but he does say the only Borg so dangerous he had a name.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always seen Locutus as, they created him to be the emissary to humans. They couldn't speak directly to humans, but once they had Picard with that brilliant mind of his, and all of his knowledge of the Federation, that they could use him to communicate to the Federation properly, which is just give up, just surrender. Resistance is futile. So there's a juggling act there. They haven't quite revealed what they mean yet. So all of these things are kind of bouncing around. I do think the nanoprobes is that's a possibility. But there's something in Picard. Now, is this, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were saying we thought it mimight be that weird, I can't remember the name of the syndrome or whatever.
Oh, aromatic syndrome.
Yes.
Well, that's the one thing that might back up the possibility of them being interested in the Borg nanoprobes, or discount it. And that is, they did suggest, as you're getting at, that maybe it was an aromatic syndrome after all that killed Jean-Luc. Well, if not that, then what else in him biologically that is still of value? So it's just been introduced this week.
Interesting.
Could still go either way.
And both Geordi and Jean-Luc are sharing that they have a theory that Frontier Day's coming up. Mm-hmm. Picard is very important to Frontier Day. Maybe what they're doing with Picard's corpse, because, spoiler alert, Picard is a super robot who just happens to look like a 93-year-old man. And then, because, that's what you want your robots to look like. And whatever, it's Star Trek. I love it. And Jack, his son, of course, they share DNA. So maybe by trying to capture Jack, which has been the big MacGuffin all along through all 7 episodes of season 3 of Picard, maybe by trying to get Jack and this corpse, they can create a super close to perfect, almost perfect rendition of Jean-Luc Picard, which would get them into Frontier Day because he was going to be a big part of it. And then they can do their terrorist act. That sound right? Did I nail that there?
John, I think you nailed those beats even better than I could have. Yes, because for whatever reason, the scrutiny and the testing of Picard for his role in Frontier Day is going to be so meticulous and reveal.
Oh, right, because they have to do a DNA
almost
screen.
Exactly the same. I mean,
yeah,
we're talking clone level duplication at this point.
Right. So that's as far as we know, that's the plot. I don't believe that's the final plot, but that's something for Down and Dirty. That's
only because, and again, we'll save it for Down and Dirty, but only because we don't know what the plot is exactly. I mean, it's hard to imagine at this point in the story why it's so imperative to have this perfect Jean-Luc duplicate involved. So
we don't know yet. Yeah, good point.
So we're setting up a lot here. Let's hope it pays off.
And that, as Joe mentioned earlier, setup is the name of the game in this episode 7, which makes sense because then we've got episodes 8, 9, and 10, right?
We're at the 2/3 mark, so we're going to start heating up here.
Okay, what's the next beat that you've got?
You know what? From there, we are decided that we're going to have a little trap and entice the Shrike to come meet us in open space in the Alpha Quadrant, as the title depicts. Going to try to trap Vadic and some of her minions and see if we can, just get that done. So she takes the bait.
Yeah,
they're on their way.
Yeah,
and you know what? Just prior to this, I mean, CGI head who comes out of Vadic's severed hand, Star says, "We need Jack."
Yes,
so she has all the incentive in the world from her point of view to go to the Titan, take a shuttle, not transporters, and board it. And pretty clever trap. Within a few minutes, we're making these guys run all over the place, and we just keep throwing up force fields, trapping them.
I love that.
Not once, but twice. They go being on the force field.
Vadic's thug. I guess they're changelings too, but
they're all changelings. Yes.
Yeah, they're all changelings. Okay. And the sheer sort of, cuteness of Jack and Sydney LaForge.
Yes.
We did see a little bit in the elevator, and he's kind of like checking her out, and then he starts reading her mind. And she doesn't know what to make of him. She immediately suspects him, which to me goes, that girl's got her head on straight.
Yeah, because Jack has no game, and he's coming off a little creepy right now.
The glowing red eyes do not help.
No, and we knew this. We knew we weren't done with this. We knew that already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The red vines, as Joe calls them. He keeps seeing these red vines, and the red door. I see a red door, and I want to paint it black. A lot of weird references here.
Yes.
But Sydney and Jack have managed to trap their pursuers
and themselves.
Right in the center, which starts ratcheting up the tension. So not terrible storytelling, but I just can't help but watch it and go like, you couldn't come up with a better plan than trap yourselves in the middle of all of these trapped bad guys.
And I can't remember if this happens prior to or after they changed or captured, but there was one shot, and I'll sink it down and dirty and real quick.
Yeah.
Where one of the changelings is literally that close to Sydney.
Yeah.
And can't manage to catch her or shoot at her.
Yes. That was it. I felt like he was hurting her, maybe. But why? Yeah, I did the same thing. It was like literally, dude, just like boop, you just touch her. She's just right in front of you. The other thing that I thought was really funny, and I'd have to dive really deep to find out who the guys were in these, changeling Imperial Stormtrooper type outfits. But the way they moved, they ran like football players.
It could be.
did you notice there was a little like when one of them would run, he'd be like, and then he'd run. There's that like go. There's a little like. Ugh. It was really funny and really, I thought, not very alien. Like, every time I've watched football, every time I've watched pro wrestling, I've seen guys move like this. And maybe that's how they're so big. Anyway, I'm going to have to really dig to find out who they were. But eventually, I think it'll be in Memory Alpha. They usually do manage to get that.
I would be a bit surprised because it's not unprecedented. I mean, we've used athletes for purely physical roles in Star Trek many times.
Yes. I'm just not seeing it. Yeah, I'm just not seeing it here, which is a shame because they know this stuff on Memory Alpha. God bless you nerds who put together Memory Alpha. You make my life so much easier.
Now, in all fairness, I don't think that we should fault our crew for allowing Sydney and Jack to be trapped because no problem, just beam them out of there.
Right. That was
as soon as
the
they
plan.
try. Damn it, Lore! Would you just knock it off our?
Here's a problem. Okay, that's a down and dirty thing. All right. Yes, that happened.
That happened.
I'm gonna remember this for down and dirty. Okay,
I'll remind you.
That happened. Yes, indeed.
Yes, as we say, Lore's deep into asserting his own dominion, his own dominance, and it seems to be fairly easily pushing Data out of the way. And
yes,
that was even despite the heartbreaking emergence of Data earlier, and he so clearly can't remember because this is a version of Data that died prior to these events.
I love that he tries to guess what ship he's on. He guesses the Scimitar.
That's would be a most recent memory for this version of Data.
Oh, I love it so much.
And of course, we have to mention again a down and dirty item, but I do have to mention quickly, that I can't remember the exact segue, but I'm talking as Data now, and I miss my friends Captain PICARD and Geordi, and you got so old.
That was so funny. And Lore wouldn't drop it. Oh, I am disgusted. Disgusted looking in your old face. He wouldn't drop it, which is so Lore.
It's so Lore, but I wonder, has Lore looked in the mirror? I mean, he ain't looking chicken like himself, is he?
That would be funny. That would be really funny to make him look, because I'm sure he hasn't seen what this version of Data looks like. Oh, Lord. Brent Spiner, you've made some bad choices.
Well, at this point, I think we pretty much get to what I would call the meat of the episode, and that's finding a little bit more about Vadic and her fellow POWs, which were kept on Daystrom Station during the Dominion War, and there's a lot of light shed here for sure.
There are so many answered questions for me in this. I was thrilled that they did this.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes logical sense. It obviously is. They don't mention Section 31 by name, but it's definitely a Section 31 type experiment with a overzealous, shall we say, scientist who's conducting these experiments, trying to see how they can use these changeling POWs to their advantage.
And
as far as infiltration.
Yeah, and something I'd never considered because human physiology and changeling physiology is so different that just about any kind of experiment that they do to the changelings is horrendous torture. And all of the things that were being done in order, correct me if I'm wrong, but to create the virus that they used to weaken the Dominion in the Dominion War. That they put in Odo, and then he joined the Great Link and basically gave everybody space herpes. Gave them this terrible disease and that spread to everyone and was devastating. It was very dramatic to be taken back to that, especially after Beverly talks earlier about I have so many ethical problems with how we can fight them back because the solution I can come up with is biologic, and that basically leads to eradication that leads to genocide.
Well, especially when you consider that one thing that's been made fairly muddy in this season of Picard, which was documented well in DS9, is that the changeling virus was engineered and delivered by Section 31. The cure was delivered by Starfleet. And they've kind of made it seem like in this season that Starfleet was behind it all.
Well, yeah. No, that makes sense. But as you know, from watching any Star Trek, their leadership and their thinking is very compartmentalized and based on need to know, which is good, which is really good, because as we hear from Takrin, trying to remember the Vulcan gangster.
Well, Kryn.
Yeah. When he confronts Raffi and Worf, he says there can be no utopia without crime.
Right.
And I love that so much. And it just seems to resonate with me through that applies to the Federation as well. It is a super utopia.
I mean, there's no heaven without hell. It's all the same philosophy. Two sides of the coin.
And it's always been part of the series. There have always been evil Commodores and space senators, and there have always been corrupt people really high up in the organization, which I always liked that they never shied away from that, because essentially that is crime. And you are saying, well, you got a utopia here. You think some people aren't going to try to game the system or, exploit the exploits? Sure. Of course they are.
Well, we find out that during the flashback here that Vadic was in fact liberated on her own she managed to get away from the experiment in a true Terminator 2 moment, spiked her captor through the back with a little metamorphosis there. And I think it was a really nice touch that she took on permanently the form and the appearance of her captor, so she could always be, as Jean-Luc put it, reminded of her torture and what she's trying to achieve now.
I love it so much. I love that she can't quite do a perfect human. She still has the scars, the marked lady, as they call her. Right. But I do love her choice to say this seemingly mundane scientist was our, basically our Hitler, was the person who was trying to wipe us out. And so I am going to steal her, everything about her. And that's the villain. Just as good an explanation as I've ever seen for why a villain looks the way they do.
I surely can't come with a better way. And as you point out, John, I'm a writer, so it's got to be pretty good if I can't think of something better, right?
I mean, I know that for a fact. I don't even have to put a question mark on the end of that. If Joe Townsend thinks it's good storytelling, then it's gosh darn good storytelling.
Well, thank you, sir.
And
basically, to wrap things up for our beats, I mean, force fields are weakening. Geordi appeals to trying to reach Data, although Laura's clearly in control, and time is running out.
Yeah.
And finally, the force fields go down, and all hell's breaking loose. Before things go totally out of whack, Geordi does reach Data, and Data is able to, put things a little bit back on track, but it's a little bit too little, too late in terms of Vadic and her minions taking control of the bridge and the Titan.
Oh man,
they're there. She's in her element once again.
It always breaks my heart when somebody takes over a Federation ship. It's just it's the most hopeless feeling.
It seems so very easy, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, after that space pirate, Sarek, after that space pirate on Discovery took over Discovery, it was just like,
oh, right.
Like, man, that was too easy.
Well, it's a cheat that Star Trek's employed from time to time from the beginning. So we'll forgive them. And it is a skeleton crew. I don't know why they would not leave some of their security on board, but hey,
I
you know
had
what?
I had all kinds of like, why didn't you anticipate this questions that I was asking during this whole, everything's falling apart on the Titan. She takes over the Titan. She opens up the intercom and she starts talking to the crew
In her own very unique way. And they say, oh God, we're screwed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, her final line was just as relevant and exciting, I think, as last week's. And it is, Jack, it's time to learn who you really are. I said, okay, yes, let's do this. Let's find out who Jack really is.
It is so impressive to me. And we discussed this. I'll tell you who's watching this. Joe and I discussed this just briefly before we went on air, but we were like, not a lot happened. Not a lot got done. A couple of good stories were told, which is great. But now we're at that moment where, okay, maybe this is a prediction, so I should save it. But I wonder if we're going to pick up in the next episode and really find out what Jack really is, because they're going way out of their way to explain to us that he is not just simply Picard and Beverly Crusher's son.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that he's now a telepath, adds a layer to the mystery.
Yes. Oh, yes. And a great moment where he, because Jack, as we established, is actually a pretty good fighter. Sydney is not. And he somehow takes over Sydney mentally just enough. She asks him to. So it's consensual. And they sort of mirror fight. And she manages to basically beat, like, Brock Lesnar of space. She manages to beat this giant monster that was gonna kill her. I mean, he was tossing her around like a rag doll. Yes. So that was a really good scene. I liked that, and it sort of makes more of a relationship between Jack and Sydney, which for some reason I like. I don't even know why I like the two of them.
Oh, I think it's inherently likable. I mean,
yeah. Picard's kid and LaForge's kid.
Stay away from my daughter. Famous last words, Jordy.
And LeVar Burton said that a couple of times.
Oh, no doubt.
That came out so naturally. We got to get into the weeds here.
Let's do it.
Teasing that we're going to get. I didn't even mean it. Teasing that we're going to get down and dirty. Let's get down and dirty.
Yes, sir. All right.
What do you want to sink your claws into first, Joe?
Well, we touch on some of it during the beats, which is typical. I mean, it's hard they're not mutually exclusive, of course.
No.
But as far as an overall view, I mean, one thing that it's staying with me is that this is my own assumption. It seems to fit so far, but I'm wondering if the overall structure of this season was broken down in this way: trilogy, two-parter.
Interesting, yeah.
And boy, this feels like the first part of a two-parter, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, there's something very unsatisfying about how things are sort of cut off in episode 7. Yeah.
I mean, it just basically introduces new mystery box storytelling, which is fine. We still got a ways to go.
Yeah.
It was in my view, was the least effective in that regard this season.
Yeah.
And I just have, I think your prediction a moment ago is spot on. I mean, we are going to pick right up in episode 8. And yes, we are going to find out what exactly is happening with Jack, because I think our remaining 2 episodes, 9 and 10, are going to have to take all these elements and bring them together finally to deal with Frontier Day, whatever's going to happen there.
Yeah, we've never discussed this movie, but I would imagine this is a movie you liked very much. The Manchurian Candidate.
It's been a while, but I did enjoy it when I saw it. Yes.
It's got an element of science fiction to it. It's got this ticking clock to this assassination that's supposed to take place. It feels a lot like we're getting lined up for that. Like we're trying to get from here to there, where they can stop whatever attack is going to happen. And this has happened lots of times in Star Trek too. I just picture poor Kurtwood Smith, wearing all that makeup. Oh my God. And isn't that from Undiscovered Country? Where there's going to be
he played Federation President in Star Trek 6, yes.
Yeah, wow. Which was the movie that featured Christopher Plummer as our sort of red herring villain. And now Amanda Plummer is our villain in this. I also wanted to bring up this, I can't remember what you called him, but it was like anger face, or whatever that angry thing is that she cuts her changeling hand, and then the hand goo flows down, and then it rises up and becomes this angry guy.
Well, that's why I've started calling that CGI head. Yes,
exactly. So I gotta say, I thought he was a changeling, and maybe he is. But he's not. But you're saying he's not. That's interesting, because he does say in this episode, and I think this is the first time we're hearing him. We're hearing anyone say anything directly to Vadic about your people, your physiology, your type, and he says something like, "You're not as special and unique as you think you are." Something like that, and it shatters her to the core. Like, for a great villain, after he takes her, and just basically is like so evil to her, she sits down and she's like crying. She's like on the verge of tears.
Well, I'm glad we both picked that up. And I'll add to it by saying this. John, go back and look at the climax to the episode Conspiracy. Here we go again.
Yes.
Don't you think that CGI head looks a lot like that mother creature that bursts out of the guy's chest at the end?
I mean, this would make so much sense to me that the, puppeteer of the puppeteers here, that we would get back to this incredibly unsatisfied question of what happened in Conspiracy, and how did those villains end or not end. Interesting. I hadn't seen that.
Well, only because if you put a photo of the two creatures side by side, you're going to basically see a contemporary CGI version of a kind of a bad puppet from 1988, but they sure look similar, beyond that.
Okay. All right. Well, you cover things while I try to find some video of that.
Okay. But as far as more down and dirty, I mean, basically, we now, as you point out, we now have pretty much established that it's probably a different species and altogether from being a changeling, something who's pulling the changeling's strings, as it were. And what else can I say? I mean, essentially, the meat of the episode was again Vadic's origins, the root of her pain, and I think, especially since she's not really the main villain, I think it was a very satisfying backstory for this particular, what I'll call a sub villain. She's there having her strings pulled.
Yes, right.
So I think on that level, it was a good way of explaining her backstory, and the fact that these particular 8 changelings, which are now multiplying, of course, were so easily manipulated because they got released from their torture, and it all comes down to this one overly zealot, cruel Section 31 scientist, apparently.
Yes.
Nice touch.
Okay, sorry. Oh, come on now. Get me past the ads on Star Trek.
I thought some of the... I'll just keep covering.
Sorry. This is really bad producing that I'm doing right here, my friend.
You go right ahead. I can always run at the mouth for a while. But I'm hoping that the handling and execution of the ongoing Jack Crusher story is handled very well in the next episode, which I agree with you will be resolved.
Yeah, we got to
get some, because on its surface, the way it is right now, it was just pretty cringy. I mean, I hate to use a popular term like that, but it fits, because it's like he was kind of creepy. Like I said, had no game to speak of. You
Mhm.
know? Oh, here we go.
Sorry,
So I'm not talking about that guy.
you're not talking about that guy. Let's see
I'm talking
if
about the mother creature that burst out of Remic's chest at the end.
oh, I think I'm
The
getting it.
big sucker like alien that came out of his
graphic
chest.
scene right here.
Here we go.
And I'm actually surprised they got away with it on TV right there. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
And then we'll
Wait
see.
for it.
Okay, I got. And,
Here it comes.
you know, I didn't remember this. What
Here it
season
comes.
is? Oh,
Oh!
oh!
I'm sorry. That reminds me of CGI head in the new show.
Yeah, with a little more meat on it, maybe. Yeah. Yikes. You know, this is probably the one I've seen the least because I knew that it was garbage. Like, man, this is a stupid episode. I hope we never have to deal with this again. Interesting. I love that he's using like the Mr. Potato Head arm to point at the screen. This is Outsider 238. Got to give him credit for this. And apparently he did it looks like a 3D printout to make this bug. Oh, that is
Hey, all I'm
hilarious.
saying is that it just seems to me that what we're seeing in CGI head currently
Yeah.
is like obviously a like a 3D projection type thing, which isn't fully fleshed out.
Right. Sort of a
but it has the same
hologrammy-
general shape and movement style.
Yeah, I mean that would be so great. That would put together villains from early Next Generation with villains from Deep Space Nine. This is the sort of thing that we fans really love, which is something reverberates through the decades and can finally be addressed at some point and you know, played out so that we get to see how it worked, how it happened in that world, as opposed to reality, which is a bunch of writers in a writer room thought that conspiracy was a great idea. And then somebody went, nope, terrible. It's never coming back. And so as fans are like, but our story. And all the people over at the Paramount lot in Los Angeles are just like, who cares? You're a bunch of nerds. Give me my kombucha. I'm going to go get my Tesla, drive to Pilates. That's how I see everybody who worked on Star Trek.
I think it's probably very accurate.
First 30, 35 years. I got to go to therapy and talk about how much I hate my dad. Hey, wait, that would make a great Riker episode and a Worf episode. Ooh, a LeVar Burton episode. Yeah, whatever.
In addition, I think there's a couple of nits here to point out. Nothing major, but you know, Riker did have the skill and the nuance to send a quote unquote corrupted code.
That was weird
to alert them to their presence. But
yeah,
and again, not yet, maybe next week. But wouldn't you have just immediately tried to send somebody over there to get them instead of just concentrating on letting them board you?
I really had a hard time with Riker getting captured. Yeah, it didn't seem to me like that's the way it had to be. There must be some reasoning they gave us, like, oh, for some reason we couldn't transport him at that point. I think there was something like that, but it just went by really fast, and the question still lingers. You know, did they do their best at trying to pull out Will Riker? It's a good heroic thing, and it's also interesting that the CGI head character is basically saying to the changeling, look, these beings only have one physical form,
right? Which
is interesting because the conspiracy monsters might have felt like they didn't have just one physical form, like there are multiple forms. I don't know.
Well, I mean, at some point, I mean, they're kind of Borg-like in their approach. I mean, there is a mother creature. There are little drone bugs that go scooting around and attach them to the cerebral cortex of their victims, etc.
Yeah. So, and what CGI head says is basically dismember one of them in front of the other one, and they'll talk. And that's yikes. And they don't have to do that because the whole question is, how do they find Jack? They're trying to find Jack. They find Jack. And I also thought it was very interesting once Vatic does find Jack, she's not trying to kill him. She wants to befriend him, basically. She wants to use him for some purpose. I can't remember her exact line, but it's something like, I don't want to hurt you. You're so important. Important to what? And she says, it's better if I show you than tell you, which tells
Exactly.
me that Vatic has taken a screenwriting course.
Yes. And a good one, apparently.
A good one. She probably did quite well.
Well, another telling line in the episode too is when Vatic is talking to Beverly and saying, I'm sure it's very painful for you at the prospect of you losing two sons. And she wasn't referring to killing Jack. She was referring to the fact that maybe he is something beyond what can peacefully exist as he currently does. In other words, does he have to leave humanity behind to be something, in Vatic's view, greater than what he is trying to be now?
Wow. Which would be such a good way of summing up what happened with Wesley, because I thought she was referring to Wesley.
Well, she did say, I know you don't want to lose two sons.
Yes.
So she was referring to them both.
She could have been. I also have a current theory that we can do here in the Down and Dirty, which is this is not Jack, that Jack is gone and has been replaced by whatever this thing is. I would hate that explanation. I don't like it because then like we've already lost potential Picard sons in the past. I don't take any joy in losing Jack.
Well, but consider this. We know from one line in this episode, and I suspected it before that anyway, that someone who's being impersonated by a changeling isn't necessarily dead. We know that Tuvok is still alive and suffering somewhere.
Right. That they tortured him to get the information out of him that they had.
Exactly. And the fact that Jack is possibly a changeling that doesn't know it, who thinks he is Jack, would be certainly sort of a higher level of changeling infiltration they could possibly do just by knowingly impersonating key figures.
Right. Which also makes me unhappy because Data's daughters from season 1, they didn't know that they were artificial.
Right. Good point.
And I do I think maybe they're stealing from each other? They could. Michael Chabon was one of the writers on this episode, or one of the producers. He worked on this episode, and he did work on season 1. So I don't know. I'm seeing things hinted at that I'm going, oh, I hope that's not what they're going with. I hope I'm misunderstanding this. And that's one of them. I really want Jack to be Jack. I really want him to be what he is. I've come to like the character and the actor. And I am one of those nerds. Joe, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh,
are you one of us nerds who hopes that? I think it's a terrible idea. What the fans are clamoring for now, and we've talked about this. I mean, like, we came up with this on our own too, was that after Picard season 3, that they keep telling this story, and the fans are saying, call it Star Trek Legacy. And anytime fans come up with a show, I'm like, that's never going to happen, because these are professionals and they're not taking their ideas from you.
I am forced to disagree on a couple points there, sir.
Go for it.
Strange New Worlds is proof that they do listen to the fans, because after they appeared on season 2 of Discovery, those characters, Pike and Una and Spock, etc.
Yeah.
The fan uproar in favor of a show with them, it was undeniable, and they did it.
Do you think they weren't going to do it?
It's a possibility. I think it's a possibility, though, that say, you know what? Maybe they introduced characters thinking there might be a demand for its own show.
Smart.
And then when they saw there was, proceeded.
Yeah.
And as far as the proposed Star Trek Legacy series is concerned, I am right there saying let's do it, because it has the full backing and will involve the creative direction of Terry Matalas.
And that is something we've discussed, and I'm still very excited by that, which is continuing to let Terry Matalas executive produce Star Trek, at least some of it. He is so good. He is so good. I'm going to throw these. There's some news that came out recently about Star Trek. Should we save that for the end of the show? Should we discuss it now in the Down and Dirty? What do you think?
Well, I think we can move on from Down and Dirty to. I got a couple tidbits.
Okay.
We have predictions. Let's make it part of predictions.
Okay. All right. That's fantastic. You want to go straight to tidbits?
Let's do it.
All righty. Ladies and gentlemen, every once in a while, here on Starbase 80 PICARD, we like to let Joe Townsend go wild. Let him just run around and tweak noses and in case of breaking glass, he breaks the glass. He breaks it open for you. He finds tidbits that maybe you saw, but probably didn't. And I'm always thrilled to hear them. So let's discuss some of the trivia, some of the Easter eggs, some of the Townsend tidbits.
Well, I always appreciate your kind words, John. I mean, how can I not deliver after that intro? So yes, let's do a couple.
You got it.
Harkening back mainly this week to me to past episodes, which again go beyond simple fan service and have a real relevant impact on this, the current storyline. The Chintaka scrapyards. Well, you know what? I wasn't able to locate the episode. It's kind of like a multiple reference item during the Dominion War in Deep Space Nine.
Oh,
just a few references to that particular system as far as battles being fought. It makes sense that there's a scrapyard there of old beaten ships. So it's directly relevant to the past DS9 episodes.
Oh, very cool.
The events that Seven refers to as far as being treated on Voyager by Tuvok via mind meld describe the events in an episode called Infinite Regress.
Oh, wow.
Where basically some of past Borg personalities start to find their way into her mainframe, as it were. Oh. And through a mind meld, Tuvok must put those at bay.
Oh.
So it was a very, very clever trap for her to set for him at the very end of the teaser this week.
Super smart. You know, it's so funny. I have not watched all of Voyager. It is just not my cup of tea. So I miss a lot of things like that, even though I watched many episodes and quite a few seasons before I quit. But yeah. This is from Memory Alpha. With this episode, Tim Russ appeared in 4 different Star Trek series. He was previously a series regular on Voyager. Yes. He also appeared in episodes of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, as well as the film Star Trek Generations. Very impressive. The appearance of Changeling Tuvok was the second incarnation of Tuvok not being Tuvok to appear. The first being in Mirror Tuvok in DS9's Through the Looking Glass. I forgot there was a Mirror Tuvok in Through the Looking Glass. I'll have to watch that again. Holy cow.
He's there. He wasn't a vital character, but he was just some nice little window dressing, and nice to see him there. And this is probably not shouldn't be included in that list, but I'm just going to put it in there anyway because we do have a friend and colleague named Flobo Boyce who loves this character. But let's not forget that there was also Tuvix.
That's a good point. Tuvix, which Flobo likes to refer to as the most racist Star Trek thing, at which a lot of us are like, wait a minute, was it Code of Honor?
Oh,
which was so racist, and everybody's like, nah, we don't really talk about that one. But yeah, Flobo's like, yeah, that was not great, but oh man, Tuvix. Tuvix, get in the kitchen. You're a cook.
Another episode that this brought me in mind with is Next Gen episode Second Chances, where we first encounter who would later become known as Thomas Riker.
Yes.
The reason being is because the split between Data that we saw most recently and Data who actually died on the Scimitar kind of represents that break.
Yes.
That we saw between William and Thomas Riker in the Second Chances episode.
Yes. That's a very good point. I always liked what they did with that Thomas Riker too. He ended up in the Maquis. And, look, I don't care what anyone says about old Captain John. I still stand by it. The Maquis were never wrong.
I can disagree.
I mean, they did some, relatively terrorist almost things, but they never tried to kill people, and they were right. They never should have been an agreement with the Cardassians. The Cardassians were, anyway. I'm so deep in the weeds here. This is tidbits, for heaven's sake. Let's talk about tidbits.
Weeds, tidbits. What's the difference? It's all great. It's all good.
I have to create a new section called "Into the Weeds."
Yes.
Let's get into the weeds.
I mentioned earlier that this also brought me in mind of an original series episode, and that would be The Enemy Within. And primarily Spock's assessment that Kirk needs his so-called negative/evil side to exist.
Very good point.
By the same token, in what will obviously become the new Data 2.0,
right,
he's going to need those lower qualities, but in check, in control, and constructively.
And I have a prediction. So
let's move on. If you got no more tidbits, I'm good.
Yeah, dude. I have no more tidbits.
Okay, predictions.
We're good.
Yep.
All right, let's make some predictions. I'm normally the kind of person who goes, I love DC movies. I love DC superheroes. I do not love Zack Snyder. So this Zack Snyder produced version of the Justice League and all his hand on Superman versus Batman, because Zack Snyder likes to go dark and gritty, which to me is very 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I was a comic book guy. I stopped collecting in the 90s mostly because everything was so much like the Punisher and so much, Spider-Man 2099 and it just, this kind of like making everything gritty, which I also blame on Frank Miller with The Dark Knight Returns,
right.
Which came out in the late 80s. But here's my prediction, and I don't want this to happen. Just bear with me here. I think there will be a union between Data and Lore, but I'm afraid it will create a dark and gritty Data. A Data who's no longer this pure spirit who wants to become a human, but now he's going to be like this, kind of like the cocaine addicted Sherlock Holmes. It's going to be the hero, but the hero with an edge, and we don't quite get to know everything he's thinking and feeling, which I always liked about the real Data, the original Data. And that's my prediction. I think you're right that they will integrate, and I think it's going to lead to a very unfun Data.
I can see the possibility, but I also see the possibility that, again, the qualities of Lore that would enhance him in his humanity wouldn't necessarily make him a dick.
Well, it doesn't have to. Yeah. But bad storytelling would say make things more difficult. Make things that used to be easy hard. And I wouldn't be happy to see it. There's another thing that was brought up, which I thought was fascinating, and maybe I should have mentioned it earlier. Geordi sums up what the Soongs were doing as being them trying to create these new life forms to try to determine if they are based on fate, if they're based on choice. They're trying to create life to see if life has a function that we think our lives have. And that's a really interesting summation of what the Soongs were doing. Did you have a feeling? Did you feel a special way about that, Joe?
I see your point. I mean, it is all, heading toward a big correlation, I think, where this is all going to come together and create a new-ish character that will take on those qualities. I can see that.
Yeah, it's funny because my nephew is very much into philosophy and psychology,
Right.
and this is always something he likes to talk about
Mm-hmm.
because he's very much an atheist, and I'm not. I grew up
Mm-hmm.
a church-going kid, and still retain a lot of beautiful parts of the religion that I was raised in, beautiful, loving parts of the religion. Basically, I'm a Christian who believes in believing and obeying what Jesus said. So I know normally we don't get into religion here, but people are usually like, "You're a Christian." Ew. And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm a Christian who follows Jesus. So not so bad, right?"
Yeah, not at all.
Because very good man that Jesus, lots of religions agree. Very good man. Anyway.
Well, I think there's something to be said for the questions you pose about faith and how it pertains to the newest Soong child, as it were. I mean, I hope you're wrong too, as far as the prediction that the Data 2.0 is going to become some kind of lost, cranky curmudgeon type. But look at it this way: what would be more uplifting? A Data that can do this and turn off his emotion chip, easy peasy, or one that has to work at being a quality human?
And you being a writer and me being an actor, I think we bend in the same directions too, which is you should never go away from conflict. Conflict is a good thing. Conflict helps you tell your stories, which is interesting because early in The Next Generation, Gene Roddenberry had said, "I don't want the crew to have any conflict with each other." To which most of the writers were like, "Great, that makes our job impossible."
Of course. And it showed at times too, and Jim was still actively involved.
It showed. And so there's a bit of it in this episode too, which is the more we show you these characters dealing with the negative things in their lives and the negative feelings and their negative reactions. We see it a lot in Geordi right now. And there's they spend a little time with it where Geordi basically says, "I couldn't lose Data again. Like, I've lost him before and it's just about destroyed me. So I can't lose him again." And that's how he gets through to Data when he's talking to Lore. He reminds him of how important their friendship is. So that's good. I like all that. That all works for me. I do predict that we are going to get a new Data out of this, and I'm happy about it now because it doesn't feel like we're just going over the same old ground. It does feel like we are moving forward to answer the question, what is the nature of the life that the Soongs have created? What are they going to learn about their consciousness? All these different pieces of data, all these artificial pieces of data put together. Can they make a soul? Can they make a whole person?
Exactly.
If they don't answer that in this episode or in this series, then I hope they give Brent Spiner more to do, because I like this question. I want them to answer it.
Well, and he said also that the only pushback he ever offered, to my knowledge, is that I can't play Data forever because I age. Well, they've come up with, I think, is a brilliant way to get around that.
Right.
It makes total sense. And with that, I mean, Brent Spiner has indicated that he would love to continue, like as usual, if the material warrants it.
Yes. And I do remember there being a moment at one of the conventions where he was Brent Spiner. I love that his last name's Spiner, because I honestly think he can be kind of prickly. I think they all can be. And let's face it, I can be pretty prickly. But I do like, he was like, "No one's offered me a series." And, and at that point, I'm like, why has no one offered that man a series? Wait a minute, is it because he's a jerk? I don't think so.
No, not
And
at
I do want to throw some credit, man. Again, I've said it about Gates McFadden. I've said it about Patrick Stewart. I have to say it about LeVar Burton, and I've said it about Brent Spiner, and I'm saying it even more. They are acting the freaking walls down.
Mhm.
They are leaving nothing unsaid, unfelt, unspoken. I love what they're doing. One of the reasons why I'm so busy right now, Joe, is because I'm directing for the first time. I'm
That's
directing
right.
some plays, and it is funny being on the other side of the stage and watching your actors and seeing your actors try to find things in the material you gave them, and yeah, I'm really enjoying the acting. I know it's big, I know it's soapy, but I'm really enjoying it.
Very nice. And I know you're doing a bang up job too.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you.
One of the big wrapping up my thoughts at least on the evolution of data.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest mistakes they made, it was budgetary, I think.
Mhm.
Way back at the beginning in the original data lore episode,
Yeah.
we saw disassembled lore and later on disassembled portions of data.
Yeah.
And it was so artificial and so mechanical. You could never believe he was ever going to become human.
Right. Right.
Well, now we have that renewed faith, as it were.
Yes.
You know what? He has the vessel now.
Yes.
He just needs to grow into the vessel.
Yes, that was another beautiful moment where they're talking about the new positronic brain and the new body that Data is stored in with the other personalities.
Right.
And LeVar Burton, I'm sorry, Geordi.
Yeah, Geordi said that, I could never work on this. This is, many, many times more complex than I ever worked on with Data.
He said, the old Data was easy by comparison. This is more art than mechanics. What a perfect example of God creating Adam and Eve.
Right.
It's art. It's not something you can just take apart and put back together again.
Now, John, I have two brief predictions.
Yes.
And then I want to hear your news, okay?
Yeah.
Actually, the first one, I don't even know if it's a prediction. I think it's already been established, but I'll just go on board saying that I think in part 8, we're going to see Tim Russ return as the real Tuvok. So next week, look for Tuvok to return in his real form.
That'd be great.
And along those lines, I think we've had Janeway's name dropped one too many times for her not to appear, probably in the last episode of the season.
I agree, and I actually think they're doing it like building it up in this sort of rhythm. Like she's mentioned in episode 1, and then I think like episode 3, and now she's been mentioned in episodes like 5, 6, 7 or something. Like, yeah, it's that great writer's rhythm of like I bring it up more, and now it's getting closer to the front of your brain. Let's see. I am season 2. Because why is any of this important? Are we done with all the predictions, do you think, Mr.
I believe so. We were going to do your news items within the predictions banner, I think.
The debut date has been named for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2. They have announced.
When is it, Captain?
I just found it out today. Did you already know this?
I know, but hey.
Because I just found it out today, but I mean, when was this? When did this come out? Oh, I guess this came out. Yeah, this came out 2 days ago. Strange New Worlds Season 2 will debut on Paramount Plus in the US. Also, this will be the debut date for the UK, Australia, Latin America, Brazil, France, lots of great
countries across the board.
Yeah. It will debut on June 15th, 2023. So this June 15th, we will return to Strange New Worlds. And 10 years before Captain Kirk on the Enterprise. Also, a little later in the year will be Lower Decks. A little later in the summer, I believe. I think they're saying right now they think at the end of the summer. And not crucial, but people are always happy to hear it. Strange New Worlds has been renewed for season 3.
Yes.
I think we pretty much knew that. But Lower Decks has been renewed for season 5. And that's exciting.
It's very entertaining and successful. And I was surprised to learn that Strange New Worlds was happening June 15th. You and I have talked behind the scenes,
Yeah.
and I was just certain it was going to be right at the end of Picard season 3, but I guess they went for the little hiatus instead.
You know, it's interesting. They've also announced that I think they've announced a pilot for Star Trek Academy. I don't know what year it's going to take place. I don't know if it's going to take place.
The news item I saw is yes, it's happening.
Yeah,
and look forward in 2025.
Wow. Well, I hope I'm still on this planet at that point.
Both of us, buddy.
Frank, 2025. Well, kids, have fun.
It'll be here before you know it, sir.
The thing that I'm interested about with that is they said it was different executive producers who said this. They said, many, many years ago when people were screaming that they wanted they wanted this series and they wanted Nog to be in it. And of course, Aaron Eisenberg passed away a few years ago. So there's, Nog can't even be a teacher, but this has been something people wanted for a long time. And the executive producers at the time were saying there's nothing entertaining about putting children in danger week after week. And I appreciate the morality, but no, people want to see it. So here it comes. And there's still some discussion about Section 31.
It's not, they haven't killed it yet. And getting Michelle Yeoh, it might be a little of a trick after her Academy Award win, but
maybe,
we'll see what happens.
You know what I would love? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, go right ahead, please.
I would love if a Section 31 could be a kind of Suicide Squad of Star Trek. If we meet a lot of the villains through it, that would be interesting. Like, what if Section 31 tries to get Armis? They want to weaponize him. Stuff like that. What if we get to see Harry Mudd again? Depending on when it's set. I don't know. I just like the idea of bringing back villains. I
think it's a great idea. I mean, we were talking about Star Trek Legacy a while back, and Star Trek Legacy Dark, Justice League Dark.
That's exactly what it would be. That's so true. It's just like Justice League Dark. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I kind of dig that.
Well, so with these announcements, we have confirmation, not surprisingly, that we're going to have 4 Star Trek series in 2023, because Prodigy will pop in there toward the end of the year.
They did announce that, yes.
Yes.
Probably in the winter, yeah.
And then, of course, at some point after that, or after the first 10 episodes, if they, divide it in 2 like they did before, we already know we're going to have the last season of Discovery in early 24.
That's right.
And we know we're going to get the return of Strange New Worlds after that.
Yeah.
So it depends on what they bring in that's new. I mean, I think a legacy show could be very worthwhile, very, very entertaining. I think it should be either episodic, or at least made up of 3 or 4 story arcs within their 10 episode season.
That would be a great way of going. And if you wanted to have one character through it all, that'd be fine too. And we just follow this character as this character interacts with all these different, characters.
It could be an anthology with connective elements, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I would be huge into that. I would be very into that. And I'll just say it right out. Sign Jerry Ryan. Jerry Ryan to me is the sun, and everyone just orbits around her. I just love her so much now.
Oh, I agree. And we know from the first couple years with Michael Burnham that the lead character does not have to be the captain. I think that having Shaw play because do we want to have Seven become the captain? It says, well, that's not necessary.
No,
they can focus on her, and Shaw could still be the captain, but he would be secondary in terms of the storytelling.
Yeah, I mean,
I can see that working.
Yeah, Shaw is never a guaranteed yes. This is what's so great about him. He is a complication, and he's a complicated person. And that's why he's not on, he's like, you guys aren't heroes. You're all troublemakers. Like, you know what that makes him? That makes him the, Starsky and Hutch reference from the mid 70s. Bernie Casey plays their captain, their police captain.
That's right.
And he, Bernie Casey isn't the right actor.
Is it?
I don't think so. I'm getting the wrong name. I'll have to correct it at some point. But basically he has the black police captain who's yelling at him the whole time. Like, that's Shaw. Like, Shaw can be that, like, I don't want to see your theatrics and your cowboy antics out there.
I'm getting too old for this shit.
Give me your badge and your phaser. You are off the case. Because these things are so disruptive that Shaw is a great influence of, like, that's a terrible idea, don't do it. And then you have to, like, defy him in order to do the heroic thing. It's a complication with a great character. I mean, he is not merely a complicated character. He is the most complicated character I think I've ever seen in a Star Trek show, and I love it.
Me too. And since we got on the topic of some more all-encompassing Trek topics, I'm going to go on a limb right here. This is not a prediction because it won't happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you how I want Discovery to end.
Oh, let's talk.
Now, this is not specific, but through whatever set of circumstances, I want Discovery to be thrown back in time, back to the 25th century, around the same time as Picard. Because that way, it's no longer a verboten topic.
Yeah.
It doesn't contradict what came before.
Yeah.
And most importantly, by doing this, it would affect the 32nd century. And I don't like having a 32nd century that's already set in stone.
I agree. That was like when they jumped ahead in time, that was one of the only things that I found regrettable about it, was like, oh, now you've explained hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to me and said, this is how it happens. The burn and all the this and all the that.
So much of it was a regression from where we are in the, what I will always consider to be the present timeline in Star Trek, which is now the 25th century of Picard.
Yeah. That the events of Voyager and Voyager and Deep Space Nine are like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And but still very much affect what's going on now. Admiral Janeway being one of the big reasons why we know that. And there's a lot of us out there like, I gotta know what happened to Captain Sisko. Someone's got to go visit the wormhole aliens.
They've got to convince Avery Brooks at some point.
If Avery Brooks never does it, if he never comes back, I will understand. I will understand that there are some actors out there who are like, nope, it's good. I don't want to touch it again. I don't want to do it again. I want it to just exist as it was. And everybody says Avery Brooks is his own man. He's got his own mind. He does things his way. And that's very Star Trek Captain to me too.
Sure.
It's like, you can't make me do what you want me to do. I do what I do. On the other hand, I got to see it as a fan. My favorite Trek show, one of my favorite captains. I love it. I love all the messiness. I love all the negativity. I love the possibilities here. I hope we get something out of it.
Well, in the remaining 3 episodes of Picard season 3 and remaining 3 episodes of the series as a whole, maybe some, I think the most likely thing is a Star Trek Legacy series, as we've
I would
described
like-
it.
I would like to
And
see
again,
that.
if they wanted to continue to utilize Discovery characters, if not all, then some of the more popular ones,
Mhm.
bring them back to that time frame, make the success of Centuries a mystery again,
Yeah.
and we'd have the future is our oyster.
I do love that idea. I folks, this is okay. All right. So I have had I've showed you my Joe Townsend books that I got for my birthday. I didn't show the folks at home. This is old hat to Joe, but didn't show the folks at home the one that took a little longer to get here, and that was the Unfriend Zone.
I was wondering where that was.
And of course, I didn't look up like my order on Amazon or I basically put it on my gift list, my present list, and I didn't look up to know that this was the one that was outstanding, but it is outstanding too.
Well, I appreciate that.
So yeah, I'm very psyched to read it. Folks, go over to joetownsend.com. And you can get his books and you can find out what's going on with Joe. And he makes a really nice website. He made it himself. Very proud of him because I have no skills.
Thank you, John, so much. I mean, a lot of those skills I have to attribute to Wix.com, but a little bit of graphic design ability doesn't hurt. So I appreciate you noticing it.
Absolutely. And a lot of our graphics, all of our graphics are done by Joe. So we're very lucky to have an artist in so many disciplines to work with us. Do you think maybe that's it for today's show, Joe? Do you think?
I think we covered it well. I mean, for an episode that didn't have a lot of meat to it compared to the others, but it did serve as a springboard to discussions of what it might be to come, both in the short term and the long term. So
absolutely. I mean, here we are rounding the bases, heading for home plate. I'm perfectly happy with this kind of a setup. It did feel a little light as an episode, but I'm not sorry I watched it. But to go to Joe's very first point of today's show, it might be so much of a setup for episode 8, which is coming up in exactly a week.
I believe so.
That, a lot of our anticipation might be alleviated by the information we're given in episode 8. We'll have to see.
You'll have to see.
That is how it works, my friends. Thank you so much for joining us. We could have cut this short so many times, Joe, but honestly, I just enjoyed.
Why?
I enjoy talking PICARDist with you. So this is the show, my friend. All right. Join us next Thursday, 2 p.m. on the West Coast, and of course 5 p.m. on the East Coast for PICARDist. And that will be part 8. And as always, live long and prosper, you beautiful nerds.
LLAP, guys.